folks. Keep the land, folks.
Why are we here? Stop the war. 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 Why are we here?
Friday morning, key neoconservatives gather at the American Enterprise Institute to explain to the world the neocon view of the war. It's what they call a black coffee briefing. Michael Ledine's here to insist Iraq must be part of a campaign to bring democracy to the Middle East. The neocons say democracies don't harbour international terrorists. Also here, the man who's been called the neocons' political godfather, Richard Perle. He's the former Reagan official who's now a key figure on the Pentagon's Civilian Advisory Board. Over 100 diplomats and reporters crowd in to get their inside and often unguarded views.
I don't think we're vindictive. I really don't.
Richard doesn't think Americans are vindictive. Well, I hope he's wrong.
And your thoughts on how it's going?
Well, it's going well. It's premature to say it's over. It isn't over.
It's hard to overestimate the American Enterprise Institute's influence.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
It's helped give George Bush's administration its current ideology.
At the American Enterprise Institute, some of the finest minds in our nation are at work in some of the greatest challenges to our nation. You do such good work that my administration has borrowed 20 such minds.
The President of the United States, on issue after issue, has reflected the thinking of neoconservatives. I think he comes at his view in his own way and through his own experience, but it happens to track very closely with the outlook of neoconservatives, especially since September 11.
The neocon future has also been plotted 5 floors below the AI in the offices of the Weekly Standard and its editor William Crystal. The dream of sorting out Saddam one way or another has haunted him for years.
Okay, so you've got him over here.
Right. This art was done for a cover piece in the Weekly Standard by David Brooks.
You've got him in a box.
The piece was called Saddam's Brain.
But you're not obsessed with it. You're not obsessed with it.
No, this was given to me as a birthday present on my 50th birthday by my colleagues here at the Weekly Standard.
Think he's still alive?
I'm afraid so, but maybe not too much longer.
Bill Kristol was Chief of Staff to the Vice President in George Bush Sr.'s White House. He was once called Dan Quayle's brain, but he believes George Bush Sr. wimped out by not toppling Saddam in the '91 Gulf War. Now he's chair of perhaps the most hardcore neocon think tank, the revealingly titled Project for the New American Century. Its mission, to shape a new century favourable to American principles and interests.
Project for the New American Century involves Richard Perle, Dick Cheney, Elliott Abrams, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz. These are only 5 of the name. Jeb Bush. All these people. Everybody knows about the Project for the New American Century. You're all going to go home and check it on the web, right? What it does is outline a doctrine for United States imperialism. Not even neo-imperialism. Bona fide old-school imperialism.
In 1998, the Project for the New American Century wrote to President Clinton, urging removing Saddam's regime from power. 18 people signed, half now in the administration, including Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and his influential deputy, Paul Wolfowitz. Preemptive action, regime change, after 9/11, those neocon policies were just what George Bush was looking for.
George Bush's current foreign policy is basically a neoconservative foreign policy, in the sense that he believes that American power is crucial to the promotion of liberty and democracy around the world. 9/11 was a huge wake-up call, reality impinged, and the President decided, in my view correctly, that to simply stand back and let things develop around the world was a recipe for more 9/11s, was a recipe for death and for tyranny prevailing, and that we had to be active in the world.
The majority of the world opposes this war and is looking at the United States going, oh my God, how can they let it happen? How can this happen in our name? And it sits here and happens, but not in our name. Not in our name. In our name. In our name. Not in our name. Not in our name. Not in our name.
Meet neoconservative Mehrav Wormser. She founded a charity that monitors the Arab press for anti-Semitic opinions. Her husband David is an advisor at the State Department, one of those minds the president borrowed from the AEI. She's part of a group of neocons who've been particularly influential post 9/11 because they specialize in the Middle East.
You have a story here about ideas and love among people, and it's true, and I'm not being cynical about it. It's real, fundamental love and power, because some of those ideas make policy, and some of the people in the group are policymakers, and we function and we view ourselves as a group, and we will all stand for each other, in defense of each other, all the way.
Against the war in Iraq, they really don't know what they're talking about.
First Sunday of the war, and America's pro-war majority makes its voice heard.
They are in my country, liberating it inch by inch, and I am very thankful to them for this.
It's also a day for reflection. Religion is important to the neoconservatives. It honors tradition, obedience, and makes you think about good and evil. Things that also, we're told, matter to George Bush.
Our own weapons, these precise and devastating bombs, have been shocking and awesome.
Their critics say the neoconservatives are wrong to look at the world as if it's a battle between moral extremes.
The problem with the neocons is that every time the U.S. gets tested, it's a question of freedom versus tyranny. And there's really kind of nothing in between. And of course, it never exactly turns out that way because the world is a lot more complicated.
But the neoconservative hawks say history shows there really is good and evil, especially the history of Europe in the last century. The appeasement of Nazi Germany that led to the Holocaust hovers over their view of the world and its dark possibilities.
For those of us who are involved in foreign and defense policy today, my generation, the defining moment of our history was certainly the Holocaust. It was the destruction, the genocide of a whole people. And it was the failure to respond in a timely fashion to a threat that was clearly gathering. We don't want that to happen again. When we have the ability to stop totalitarian regimes, we should do so, because when we fail to do so, the results are catastrophic.
20th century Europe said never again, then failed to save the Muslims of Bosnia. It was American power, the neocons like to say, that finally ended the Balkan horror.
The failure to deal with Bosnia decisively and early was a defining moment for a lot of neoconservatives and some others as well. Nobody was prepared to take serious action in Bosnia until we did. The fact is that the world tends to look the other way, and we don't.
On 17th Street, the protesters are zeroing in on the neocons HQ. Inside, the American Enterprise Institute's latest black coffee briefing. Michael Ledeen, unapologetic about America's shock and awe tactics.
But all the great scholars who have studied American character have come to the conclusion that we are a warlike people and that we love war.
That's one point you forgot to talk about today. That's one point you forgot to talk about.
One of the protesters has sneaked inside.
What do we talk about?
I'm sorry, you have to leave.
Of this war.
Then you have to leave. You're going to be escorted out by the police.
Talk about that.
Wow.
I think she disagrees with our view on this.
Yes, I know.
No one would have imagined that the United States could and maybe should consider France and Germany to be strategic enemies. And yet they have behaved now for several months as if they were strategic enemies.
Michael Ledeen raises the stakes, as does Pentagon advisor James Woolsey.
And we are going to have to be involved for the next, I think, several decades in helping change the face of the Middle East.
Mr. Pohl, there's been talk of these meetings as a kind of victory celebration. People are talking about Americans liking war. Are you worried about the tone of this? Are people getting a bit carried away here?
I don't believe that's the tone of these discussions. I think what this may betray is some underlying sense that maybe we were right after all.